Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Orkadowski of wearechange.org, and right now the G20 has just ended, and Paris is on fire. Of course, these major events have major global implications, and to help us understand that, we have Lior Gantz. He is the founder of the wealthresearchgroup.com. He's an investor and entrepreneur, and he's going to help us understand what is happening financially, geopolitically, and with the larger picture. Now, Lior, it's pretty crazy out there. There's a lot of stuff that the mainstream media is not telling us, especially behind the G20 meeting. What are you seeing as some of the most important takeaways from this global annual meeting of 20 of the world's, some people say puppets, leaders that just happened in Buenos Aires, Argentina?
I think one of the most important things is that the meeting did not have a draft for the media planned out months in advance. Usually on G20 meetings, G7 meetings, the publicists have everything ready months in advance, and they have it proof checked by all the member governments. And this time they're drafting it right now, and this means that there is no consensus. It's hard to find common ground between the largest 20 countries in the 20 economies in the world to draft one communication to all the press, to Reuters, to Thomson, etc. And this is important because on one end you have the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the emerging economies, and on the other hand you have the established superpower, the United States, and its dragged countries. And so it's very important to understand that we live in a time where there is a separation, a division, and basically the United States, as the superpower, is trying to make sure that it survives and thrives in an era where China is becoming a bigger and bigger country all the time. So 25% of the world's GDP, a quarter of the world's economic activity, is originated in the United States. It's still the biggest economy in the world. But China is now 15% of the world's economy. It's just insane thinking that it was the poorest country in the world in the 1970s. So you are seeing the rise of another power, and what they're doing is they're waging war in the United States, but they're not calling it war. The One Road, One Belt initiative is basically a consolidation of the entire Eurasia region. This is how China moves resources, moves troops, changes alliances, changes diplomacy, changes everything about the world using an economic incentive. So our world right now, it looks like World War II was the peak of physical wars, invasions. There are far less invasions today in the world because you can't physically do that so easily. It's just so much liability and a problem. Wars are waged right now economically. Countries are trying to break other countries' currency and alliances. And this is what a trade war is about. You're trying to make sure that your country has better prospects for the future by eliminating other countries from the alliances, from groups of trade, for changing the way that economies work. And this is what happened. This is the fate of this G20 meeting. Whatever the US and China can do, obviously they're both trying to prevent an all-out war or a cyber war or something that's very traumatic, because obviously you've seen the studies as much as I have. In the United States, if you cut out the power for 5 days in any major city, it's done. 5 days is all it takes to break society down completely. So you don't want anyone tapping into your grid, anyone doing anything to interrupt your daily lives. And this is something that can easily happen. Both countries have the weaponry, the spyware, everything like that to create these sort of crises. So they're trying to avoid this, but it's not that easy. The United States is a country that thinks in one way, and Chinese people think in a very different way. And for them to come together and agree, it could take years. And this is what I think the media is not telling you. The media is telling you that Trump and the Chinese will all want you to have a Merry Christmas, and the markets can rally into 2019. But honestly, the the best performing asset of 2018 has been the US dollar. 90% of global assets are down for the year. That's 90%, and that the only time this has happened is over 100 years ago, Luke. So this is a very rare event for a fiat currency that doesn't pay any interest or a very minimal interest to be the best performing asset of an entire calendar year. And compare that to last year, right? Where you had very speculative assets going up like crazy. You had the S&P 500 going up every single month consecutively with very low volatility. You remember 2017 was all about low volatility and the markets going up no matter what. 2018, everything worries the markets. And this is because the Fed is also tightening interest rates and tightening its balance sheet. So you're seeing a very different year. And I think most people are missing the fact that the Federal Reserve and the federal government are at odds with each other for the first time in many years. They colluded and collaborated since 2008. And all throughout the Obama years, there's been nothing but harmony between the two institutions. And now they're very much at odds with each other. And I think that is also going to play a big part in 2019 and how the next election cycle comes about and what will happen during the next election cycle. This is all major stuff. And I think the media has tried to play the G20 meeting as the meeting that solves all problems. And they're going to see that it doesn't. The media is going to keep celebrating every time that China and the United States issue a nice announcement of progress. But I think overall, this is something that will linger on for many years. By 2025, you're going to see the Chinese economy is the biggest economy in the world in terms of GDP, forecasted between 2025 and 2027. That's a big shift, a major shift. And then 10 years later, by 2035, they're going to eclipse the U.S. as the military superpower of the world in terms of budget and size of armies. So as you know, countries are thinking 20, 30 years into the future. Alliances are being changed right now due to this. And I think President Trump is trying to make sure from the way his mind operates that the United States has a chance to stay on top for many, many years with this happening. So
and just let me just cut you off. The alliances are very clear at the G20. Very clearly see Putin high-fiving the Saudi crown prince. You see China taking photo ops with them, in India. It was only China, Russia, and India that took photos with the Saudi crown prince. We saw Emmanuel Macron go up, the French president, to the Saudi king, and he was laughed at and told blankly no. We saw, of course, the Turkish prime minister all the way on the opposite end, and the United States hanging around with their usual allies, Japan, and trying to figure out a new kind of alliance with India as well. So it makes perfect sense that, of course, the G20 couldn't release a press statement or come together on something cohesively, but the factionings of these world powers are more evident than ever with just some of the body language and the pictures that we're just seeing plainly come out of there.
And all the countries you just mentioned are all the countries that are dumping treasury debt. China's dumping treasury debt. Japan, that you didn't mention, but they are dumping treasury debt. Their treasury debt holdings are back to 2011 levels. Turkey is dumping the dollar. Russia has dumped 84% of its holdings in treasury debt. So, and this is going on at the same time as the Fed is also liquidating its major treasury debt. So and this is why interest rates are rising, obviously, on treasury auctions, because they're demanding more. Listen, 40% of U.S. debt is funded by foreigners. So your Medicare, your Medicaid, your Social Security, your income security, your defense spending, your education spending, the interest you pay on the existing debt, 40% of the budget is financed by foreigners. There is no other country that enjoys that sort of a credit and access to liquidity that the United States has. Now, some of it is because other countries are obligated to hold U.S. dollars, but other reasons are the stability of the United States compared with other countries and the economy of the United States compared to other countries. Obviously, Americans are very, very critical of their government, etc. But on an overall status, the United States is still one of the best countries to do business at, etc. So they're enjoying this, but the President Trump administration is toying with these elements that have been around for many years for the United States. On one end, every president for the United States has made sure that he has his lenders as a close circle to him, and President Trump is looking to do a different sort of political environment. He's not so much looking to get other countries to back the U.S. dollar by buying treasury debt. He's more looking for a fair trade agreement so that jobs and and the economy doesn't go and gets outsourced even more. He's trying to bring manufacturing home. This has an unintended consequence of other countries saying, maybe I should align with other countries and not the United States. Maybe I should finance U.S. debt that easily, or for these rates that I've been willing to accept for many years. And so this is why I think a major problem for the U.S. dollar is coming. And since your audience, I know they're very sophisticated, I've listened to many of your shows, we created a special report on this at wealthresearchgroup.com/attack and wealthresearchgroup.com/drama, because I think most people need to understand that the next election cycle and the next decade between 2020 and 2030 is going to be all about the fact that the United States would have to fill in their $1 trillion deficits from printing currency outright, something that they've not done at any point since the Federal Reserve was founded. So there's been QEs and issuing of debt, but outright printing of currency where the auctions are not filled to capacity, and the United States doesn't have the capability to fund their deficits, that has not happened. The United States hasn't had to deal with that sort of a crisis, and that will put immense constraints on the dollar, and we can definitely see the dollar fall between 25 and 30% in purchasing power for the next 5 to 6 to 7 years here. Major change from the last 7 years where it has been in a bull market, and you've seen the inversely correlated alternative currencies like precious metals and other fiat currencies fall in value. So you're going to see a very different United States, and this is all coming as the United States is coming off of a 10-year expansion of economics. So now when it will roll over into a recession, these expenses are staying put. Look, Social Security is not going down in recessions. Income security is not going down in recession. It goes up. Defense spending is not going to change. In fact, it's projected to go up and up in this arms race with China. So funding these deficits is going to be a very big problem, and this is the war. This is the war. When other countries are convinced by China to not buy treasury debt, this is the war. This is where you destabilize a country. This is how populism, as you're seeing in Paris right now, comes to the United States. This is how the price mechanisms are being unbalanced. This is how problems happen, and this is why Ray Dalio, the world's largest hedge fund manager, is saying that this time resembles the 1930s because of the rise in populism. Now, populism makes stock markets crash. It makes wages go very stagnant for years, and this is part of the problem in Paris. And I can talk about what the Fed chairman just said, which is just unprecedented for a Fed chairman to say what he said, because it shows how these central planners believe that they got it all figured out. Because the recovery happened for the billionaires, for the millionaires, but it just didn't happen for the mainstream person. It just didn't happen for the average person. So when you hear the media saying the economy is booming and all that sort of language, some people, tens of millions of people don't understand what the media is talking about because it didn't reach them personally. And I think this is important.
Booming for a few people, but it's not booming probably for you. And it's interesting to see rhetoric coming from the Trump administration saying that the Federal Reserve is a bigger threat than China. So there is a lot of conflict internally. Donald Trump is definitely unpredictable to say the least. So I definitely agree with that. There's going to be major tensions because, like many experts say, and like we've been covering for years, the century of the 21st century will be one of the questioning of U.S. hegemony, and it will be mainly done by China and Russia, and it's going to be predominantly right now done economically. So Lior, thank you so much for all that information. Your link to wealthresearchgroup.com will be in the description below, but I wanted to leave you with anything else you wanted to say and just more information about how people could find you and some of the work that you do.
So the Free Financial Loser is the best way to follow our work, because basically wealthresearchgroup.com was founded about 3 years ago as sort of a labor of love. For many years, I invested full time for my own money, and I had a boutique fund also for some very well-to-do individuals. And Wealth Research Group was born when the Fed first hiked interest rates in December of 2015. That's when I knew change was coming to this economic cycle. And I said many people lack financial education and lack the opportunity to invest and save in the right way, because the media is just brainwashing people in the wrong way. And if you don't take action, and if you don't have time even to take action, then you're going to be part of this world of stagnant wages that the Federal Reserve is gunning for. And this is what I think is most important, Luke. The Federal Reserve banks are gunning to keep wages stagnant. They do not want rising wages in the United States. It couldn't be more clear after Fed Chairman Powell, what he said last Wednesday. He said, "We have found the formula to keep inflation low, unemployment low, and stagnant wages." That's a direct quote. And so what they want is an economy that has many more people employed, and therefore stagnant wages, and they think they found a way to keep this all at bay with low inflation, which is very, very terrifying, because this is like saying this time is different. And it means they're not watching inflation in the right way. But anyways, that's how Wealth Research Group was founded. And the ideas that are going on in the newsletter are basically ways for me to transfer what I am researching and what I'm analyzing onto the reader. And so if you go to a website, that's one of the best ways. Our wealth library, if you go to wealthresearchgroup.com/top, or you go to our top menu and click special reports, that's an aggregation of all of the PDF downloads that we have. It's a great weekend read for people who are Americans and are savers or investors, and just people in general who want to understand why the hell things are happening the way that they happen. And that's it, basically.
Lior, thank you so much for the big information download. Remember, people, don't be a dummy. Don't pay attention to the mainstream media. These people, these central controllers, these banksters, these people who run and control what we see on TV, they don't have your best interest at heart. Just a heads up there. And if you found this video helpful and informative, please share it with your friends and family members. Thank you for all you amazing human beings who keep independent media alive by supporting us. And once again, this show wouldn't be possible without you, and that's why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.